Thanks everybody for attending. Welcome to the postgraduate study webinar for the creative writing discipline, Master of Arts in Creative Writing. And we'll also be talking about the graduate diploma in creative writing and the graduate certificate in editing and publishing. And thanks again for registering for this evening, for coming along. Obviously, it's a trying time for many people in many ways, but it's really great to hear and kind of see that people are still interested in studying creative writing at UTS. And so we're here to talk you through the degree courses we offer in the postgrad space and answer your questions. I'll just do a couple of introductions. My name's Craig Batty. I'm the head of the creative writing discipline, and I'll be your MC tonight. And I'll be going through this PowerPoint presentation with you and emceeing with all the questions you might have. I'd also like to introduce a few other a few other people. First of all, my colleague, Associate Professor Deborah Adelaide, who's the postgraduate coordinator. She'll be with us tonight. Do you want to say a quick hi, Deb?
Hi everyone, and welcome along to the webinar.
Thank you, Deborah. We've also got a current student with us, Claire Benito. She's going to be talking to you a little bit later as well. So do you want to say hi, Claire?
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. We've also got our faculty marketing manager, James Liu, who some of you may have been in contact with, who's going to be helping with some kind of logistical administrative questions. Do you want to say hi, James?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Okay, so it's 5:05, so I think we'll begin. Before we begin, of course, we want to say a couple of things. First of all, we will be recording today. We'll record the audio, the screen share, which is what you're seeing now, hopefully, and the presenters will not be recording anything from you. Obviously, your videos are not on and you're not speaking. We'll not be recording any of the questions or comments that you type either. So this is just a little thing for you to say about that. I'd also like to acknowledge country as well. We're all potentially on different lands at present, but UTS is, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, to their elders past, present and emerging, and anybody who is Indigenous with us tonight, welcome, and thank you for attending. Okay, so we're going to go through a few slides with you, and you'll be able to ask us some questions. We will be taking questions throughout, so if you want to type your questions, we will, some of the people will be answering the questions as we go. Some of them will also be keeping them to the end for us to speak through. We'll just be talking through some of the key points to the programs tonight. So why study creative writing now in particular and also beyond? And it might be an interesting question to think with all that's going on in the world at the minute, why would you be looking to study creative writing at UTS? Well, Deb and I will have a quick discussion about this. We think there's lots of benefits. I mean, obviously, some of you are thinking about creative writing as a career option and thinking about pursuing your interests. Maybe you've had a passion for writing a novel or a screenplay or a memoir or something similar for a long time and haven't had the opportunity to do that. A lot of our students who do join these programs are mature students who are in that situation. Not all, but a lot of them. And so maybe at this time you're thinking this is really the time to start pursuing this endeavor. So you might be really interested to really kind of pick up your passion project and now is the time. Obviously included in this, you will graduate with strong communication skills, written and as well and verbal as well, that will translate across industries. So it's not just about following your passion project, it's about developing communication skills for other sectors. Obviously the arts is one of them, but also creative writing, storytelling and narrative is really a really desirable skill and area now within the corporate sector. So lots of organizations, businesses looking towards story and narrative. So for people who are looking to maybe enhance their career or take their career in a different direction that's not just about being a novelist or screenwriter per se, for example, there are lots of kind of creative writing related jobs in those industries as well. And I guess, and I'll throw to Deb here as well to say something about this. We think there's something quite interesting about creative writing right now in the middle of COVID, and this idea around well-being and having a sense of purpose and really connecting with your sense of creativity, which you might have maybe have left behind for a while, And maybe now is the time to reconnect with that. Deb, did you want to say anything about that?
Well, thanks, Craig. All I'd add to that is the fact that, yes, being creative in this time is potentially weird, but also we're finding generally in the community that people are really turning back to creative pursuits and reassessing some fundamental things about their life-work balance, possibly. So obviously the COVID-19 crisis is inspiring all sorts of particular responses amongst creative people. Craig mentioned the word narrative. That's something that is absolutely fundamental to who we are as human beings. We know that. We know that's what separates us out as a species. And what we're offering in the creative writing program is the opportunity to hone your narrative writing skills to make sense of things, your own world and the world out there. So I guess it's more relevant than ever, studying creative writing.
Thanks, Deb. And also, as you'll see in a little while when we talk about the different courses that we run, some of you might be more interested in, say, the industry and publishing and editing side of things. So that's also definitely something you can do, either if you do the graduate certificate in editing and publishing, which is obviously very specifically focused on the industry and publishing, but also, within the other two, the master's and the graduate diploma, you also get the chance to take an option in editing, and you might want to follow that kind of pathway as well. So that's definitely something else that you might get out of the course, if it's, rather than just your own personal project. But if that's what you want to do, that's fine as well. So here's the Master of Creative Writing course structure. So this is, there are a total number of 6 core subjects and 3 electives. And at the end of the master's course, you do a final major project, your big project. There is an opportunity to do parts of the project if you've already got a project in mind throughout the course in different subjects, in different guises, if you like. But really, you either kind of really take that much further, or you start a new big project at the end of the master's. And that's where you work on that manuscript or that screenplay or whatever it is you're writing, under the mentorship of an expert in the field, with some workshopping as well. We have this course, because it's 9 subjects, 3 subjects per semester is full-time. So technically it would take 1.5 years to finish this full-time. But most of our students do this degree part-time. So you might do 1 or 2 subjects per semester. So it might take you anywhere between 2 and 5 years, to be honest. And we're very, very flexible. And if you wanted to do a little bit of full-time, switch to part-time, drop a couple of subjects here and there, we're quite flexible as well. Deb, did you want to add anything about the course structure and the mode?
Only to just remind you, in case you are not already aware, that we all our subjects are taught in the evening, because while we do offer this full-time mode, as Craig's explained, we find that most of our students are working full-time. So even if you are thinking of taking the program full-time, just be aware that the subjects will all be taught in the evenings.
Yeah. So as it currently stands, all of our subjects across all the 3 degrees that we'll speak to you about take place in the evenings, usually between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. To obviously cater for the majority of students working full-time or part-time at least. And we'll talk about some of the subjects in a little while. The graduate diploma is kind of nested within the master's, so it's kind of like a companion degree. It sits underneath it, and it's very, very possible that you might start with the graduate diploma and then articulate up into the master's. Or if you begin with a master's, then you suddenly realize for whatever reason you can't complete, you can exit with a graduate diploma. So that's, again, very flexible. And so there are 3 core subjects for this degree and 3 electives. The missing piece in this diploma is the final project and a kind of an industry seminar that we have as well. So few subjects different, but the rest of it is very, very similar. Deb, anything you want to say about this? It's pretty self-explanatory, I guess.
Yeah, or the only thing I'd add to this is that it's very, very common for students to articulate from the diploma up into the master's. In fact, I'd say the majority of our diploma students also look to do that. Not so common to drop back from the master's to the graduate diploma, but as Craig mentioned, this is possible too if your circumstances permit and you don't feel you can proceed through to the master's. So it's all set up to make that very easy for you, and it's very, very common to do that.
And I'll just maybe mention quickly about some of the kind of subjects that you would learn across these two degree programs. Most of the subjects are, well, obviously writing practice based. All of the subjects have writing practice assignments and workshopping. That's what we do across all the subjects. Some of them, there's one subject, theory and creative writing, which is tended more towards the theoretical side of creative writing, but it is looking at how theory can inform your practice. And as I mentioned, one of the assignments is like a creative response. It's not just a kind of a lit studies separate kind of theoretical subject, which maybe other universities would do. Quite a different approach. But all the other subjects, we cover everything from short fiction to novel to writing for the screen, creative non-fiction, things like reviewing arts and culture, memory and life writing. So we really cover all the genres and forms of creative writing. And as I said, fiction as well as non-fiction. Anything you want to add there, Deb?
Perhaps we should just mention that we don't currently offer a subject in poetry, and we don't teach theatre or drama, but of course we do teach screenwriting. Apart from that, we do cover just about every other aspect of creative writing.
Thank you. And it's also worth reminding, well, it just reminded me actually, for those people who are really interested in screenwriting specifically, because some people are coming to look at screenwriting as a focus, although we don't have a lot of screenwriting subjects, we now have a subject from the Media Arts and Production degree, which allows you to do another screenwriting/screen production unit. And there's also an option to do a more industry entrepreneurship kind of unit if you're interested in that aspect of the screen industry as well. And obviously, for your major project, you could do a screenplay. So it is possible to find a pathway through if you were interested in screenwriting. And then we have our other course, which is the Graduate Certificate in Editing and Publishing. And this has 2 core subjects and 1 elective, and the elective comes from the master's or the diploma bank of subjects. The core subjects are professional editing and book publishing and marketing. And this takes 1 year part-time to complete. So usually, maybe two subjects in autumn and 1 in spring, or vice versa. We don't offer the publishing and marketing subject in autumn, which is why you can't do it full-time in one semester. And this is a really popular postgraduate certificate, and it's a lot of people who are looking to either work in the industry or other people who are somehow doing editing and publishing as part of their role, whether it's in corporate communications, sometimes in schools and education as well. So a lot of students do this to really enhance their kind of, I guess, comms or humanities and arts-based career, rather than seeing it as a career shifting towards book publishing and marketing. And it's a really popular, and it's, I mean, Deb can say a little bit more about this, but this is the one that's really solely taught by industry professionals, people who are actually editors and publishers and proofreaders and that kind of thing.
Yes, this was actually set up by industry professionals, one of whom still teaches in the program. We're really, really lucky to have her. The only thing I'd add here is that the subject professional editing is an elective in the overall master's or graduate diploma elective choice. And it's actually a subject that a lot of writing students take, even though they're not particularly interested in editing or editing as a career, because the subject teaches such wonderful skills that translate to creative writing. So we find this subject is really popular amongst students who just want to get a bit of insight into how to be really good editors of their own creative writing.
Thanks, Deb. And we'll come to this shortly, but one thing to mention here in terms of the editing and publishing aspect is that a lot of students end up working on we have a student anthology. And as I mentioned, we'll look at that in a second. But this plus they're working on the anthology, being involved in producing and launching a book with a publishing company. That's really exciting. So people really get a lot of really positive experiences from this combination. So why study creative writing at UTS if we haven't, given you a sell already? A contemporary approach, we've hinted at this idea that you'll be learning in a program that's very well connected with industry and at the forefront of opportunities that are shaping Australia's writing scene, including fiction, non-fiction, life writing and screenwriting. And it's fair to say that in most subjects, you'll have at least one guest lecturer from industry, whether that's a kind of a publisher or a production company for screenwriting, or whether it's a freelance writer, freelance editor. And remember as well that all of the creative writing staff at UTS are also active writers and researchers in the area of creative writing. So you've got a really strong industry connected, research connected team of people who are experts in your area and will have a lot of experience in not just teaching, but also publishing, mentoring, guest lectures, that kind of thing. So really, really well-known people. We've mentioned the anthology already, but there's another little note about the anthology, which is called the UTS Writers Anthology. We have a slide about this shortly, so you'll see from that. And the third point, I guess I've already covered that. Deb, Deb, she doesn't like me to remind her this, but Deb's been at UTS a long time and knows everything there is to know about UTS and has seen a lot of great people work and study and graduate at UTS and can really talk about the caliber of people who are connected to the creative writing program at UTS.
Yes, thank you for reminding me, Craig. I have been there for a long time. And one of the things that has always distinguished UTS's creative writing program has been this aspect that Craig's mentioned, the professionalism of its teaching staff. So you'll be taught by people who are publishing books, who are working in with industry, who are engaged in large research projects, people who are really practicing what they preach, essentially. And this connection with the industry, with the literary and the screenwriting industries, is something that has been a feature of UTS right from the very start, back approximately 40 years ago when it first started teaching creative writing. And we're very, very committed to this. So you will be taught by people who are, I guess, at the cutting edge of the literary and screenwriting industries.
And don't worry, Deb's not been here for 40 years.
No, I'm far too young for that.
And we've been very lucky over the last quite a few years now every year to be hosting a copyright agency sponsored writer in residence at UTS. Our writer in residence this year, although in residence kind of means a little bit virtually at the minute and not actually in the office, but is Bree Lee, who many of you may have heard of, or if you haven't, you can certainly look her up. She's a really kind of well-regarded up-and-coming young writer who's published 2 non-fiction books, but is currently working on her first fiction book. So Bree is working UTS this year, and is giving guest lectures to students, postgraduates and undergraduates as well, and also is available for consultations for postgraduates and undergraduates. Last year we had Christine Piper, who is a previous Vogel Award winner, and then we'll have another one next year because this is a 3-year funding round. So we're really proud as well that we have this kind of endorsement from industry that they would kind of pay for young and up and coming writers to spend time with us at UTS and to really connect with our students. And at the end of the year, they usually do a public lecture. So we'll work out the format for that, whether it's going to be live or in situ or virtually later, but keep an eye out for that. We try and advertise a lot of our events widely to kind of get people connected to our community. And here's the anthology I mentioned. There's the 33 covers from 33 years of the student anthology. This year we're on number 34. We're just putting this one into production right now. Should be out in a couple of months. And I'll ask Deb to maybe say a little word about this shortly, and especially how she has a copy of every anthology in her office. But this again is a really great opportunity, not only just to get published and to be part of a real book that's published in collaboration with the Sydney Publishing Company, but also to be connected with the students that organise launches and readings and really getting the work out there so it becomes part of the Sydney literary scene. and we often get quite high profile writers to read all the work and to write a foreword to kind of really endorse the book. And it's a very well renowned, very respected student anthology. And I think this year's one is going to be fantastic. Deb, do you want to say anything about this?
Yes, I've had a lot of experience with the UTS anthology over the years, and this is something we're really, really proud of. It's widely regarded as the leading student anthology across the country. It gets reviewed annually in major newspapers such as the Sydney Morning Herald. And the important thing about the anthology is that it's your opportunity not just to submit your work, but to get involved in the editing process, because the anthology is totally owned by the students. So we will form a new student committee, and you can be a first-year student, you can be in your first semester, or you can be at the end of your program, you can be a postgraduate or an undergraduate. We get you to submit an expression of interest to be on the committee, and then the committee does everything, absolutely everything, selecting the work through to editing, through to promotion. And that's done, of course, under the guidance of an academic supervisor. So it's a wonderful opportunity for hands-on experience of what it's like to edit and produce a book. But it's also, of course, a wonderful opportunity for you to get your work published.
Thank you. So we're now going to hear from Claire, who, as I mentioned, is a current master's student at UTS, and she's going to give us a few insights into the student experience of the program. Over to you, Claire.
So hi everyone. So I'm in my third year of the master's program. I've been studying part-time between 1 or 2 subjects per semester. I actually spent the first 2 years enrolled in the graduate diploma, but because I wanted to test things out and see what the coursework was like. And now I've upgraded to the master's program, so I can do a major project where you work on a larger piece and have one-on-one consultations with your lecturer. So one of the things I've really valued in this course so far is just the freedom to explore and experiment with a wide variety of writing styles and genres. I've been introduced to a lot of really interesting writers in this course, and you get this safe space to try out new techniques, see how they fit, mash up genres, do whatever you like. And I found this really helpful in trying to figure out my voice as a writer, what styles, what topics and themes that I'm most drawn to. I walked into this course pretty sure I was going to be a novel writer, but the first piece that I published was an assignment here in creative nonfiction. And my major project right now is in screenwriting. So you just never know, and it's been really fun discovering that throughout the course. As part of the lecture series, you do get some guest lectures from successful authors. And I found these authors to be really generous, really letting us pick their brains, basically. And there's a real honesty about the industry and the writing process. They tell us about their highs and their lows, what their writing routines are like. And it's kind of like a part pep talk or part reality check, which I think is important to know as someone who wants to do this as a career. So, after your first success as a writer, you don't just cross over into the land of sunshine and rainbows, onto the next thing. Your challenges reset and evolve, essentially. So in terms of workshopping, the assignments for most subjects are creative pieces, and you'll have spent the entire semester workshopping these with your classmates and getting expert feedback from your lecturer. So at the end of each subject, you've got something that maybe needs some final revisions, and then you can give it a go and send it off. And as I said, my first published piece was an assignment here, and my lecturer suggested where would be best to submit it or where it would fit best. And that made a huge difference for me, because I tend to hoard my pieces, and sending out work into this abyss of potential publications can be quite intimidating. I've found the study plan quite flexible here. So I found that 1 to 2 subjects per semester has worked best for me, and this is just more of a personal preference. It is creative work, so even if I do show up every day, I've found I've needed some simmering time or some distance away from the work. Sometimes I crack my story problems, sometimes I don't, sometimes I thrive in stress, and sometimes I get really blocked. So, it's just about knowing yourself and how you work. I generally like to work intensively on fewer projects, so 1 to 2 subjects per semester has worked as a good balance for me. So that's just something you need to keep in mind when you're deciding on your workload. But overall, I've learned so much about the kind of writing that's out there, my own writing and process, and I've just felt really well supported along the way. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Claire. Just realised I was on mute there. That was great. Thank you, Claire. And obviously the people here tonight might have some questions for you shortly. On to the next slide. Okay, so we've mentioned a little bit around career outcomes and job outlook. These are the kind of areas you might expect to work in. But as I've mentioned, it can all depend on what you want to do. Some of you might be already working in these industries. We actually have a lot of people who are already working full-time in arts and communications roles, teaching, etc. People who are already well-published writers as well, and they just want to either reskill or take their practice further. Others, maybe slightly younger students, might want to be using this as a platform to go and to try and get work in things like advertising, editing and publishing, film and TV, digital and experiential media, journalism and communication. So there's lots of opportunities, and it really does depend on where you're at and what you're wanting to do. But certainly across the program, the course you take, you will build a strong portfolio of works. And obviously, and as I mentioned, you can kind of gear that towards what you want to get out of it. So for example, if you're really interested in more the maybe entrepreneurial, you might want to set up your own business eventually. You could, for example, do the new advanced creative entrepreneurship subject that we brought in, which is a media production based subject, which is actually taught by an industry kind of body, if you like. So you really can tailor it towards what you want. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of our students eventually go on to do creative doctorates, so PhDs. Creative writing PhD is very, very big in Australia. And for a lot of people, it's a really great way to, well, some people want to do it because they want to become an academic, like Deb and I. We'll not say any more about that. But some people want to do it because it gives them a chance to really, to write a full length work. So to write a full novel and do the research that might be associated with the novel. Or if it was a screenplay, they might want to develop their own TV series and do some research around something around TV series. So a lot of students actually do eventually go on and do creative doctorates. Deb, do you want to add anything there about career outcomes and outlooks?
I just mention that even without having to think very hard about this, I can think of graduates who have positions in the literary and related industries. For example, at Writing New South Wales, which used to be called the New South Wales Writers' Centre, at the Australian Society of Authors, at publishing houses, including my own publisher, Pan Macmillan. In fact, one day I walked into my publisher and there was not one but 2 former UTS creative writing students working there, and my publisher said to me, "Oh, we love our UTS graduates." So the industry has a lot of respect for the UTS creative writing program, and I know it's very well regarded, particularly in editing and publishing. Which we talked about the graduate certificate in editing and publishing earlier, one of the great advantages of that is the industry-based people who are teaching it are able to pretty well funnel through any job opportunities, and it's been quite common for students to obtain positions even before they finish their certificate.
Thank you. And it's true that a lot of industry professionals are really keen to come in and speak to our students. So we don't often find it hard to get them to come in. And it's just at the bottom there, it's worth, if you want to look this up afterwards, this thing around the growth in, well, I guess, writers and storytellers, and we talk about narrative and how, how narrative has been used in many, many areas now, especially in things like, the glam sector, galleries, libraries, museums, how people are looking for writers and storytellers to help curate those, the exhibitions, the experiences, the story worlds that you might be stepping into if you're in a particular exhibition, for example. And we have had, and we continue to have, organizations asking us to recommend students who can write, who could just write and then maybe get assigned jobs writing a narrative experience for something. So really, really interesting kind of job prospects in that regard. So here are some of the students. I mean, there's a long list of UTS creative writing graduates who have gone on to be very well-known writers, won lots of awards, both nationally and internationally. And here's just some of the kind of more recent and more emerging writers, so people who have maybe come through the postgraduate and also the undergraduate degree in the last kind of 10 or 12 years, who are publishing books, actively winning awards, becoming kind of like, well, not media celebrities, that sounds a bit, people who are actually becoming part of the zeitgeist, who are asked to talk about things and be on radio or TV or go and do talks in schools, etc. And we've got a very strong, success rate in this area. Deb, you'll know a lot about these graduates.
I've got a feeling I've taught most of these graduates, actually, or been in. Yeah, I have taught all but one of them. So this just represents a small cross-section of our students, actually a few undergraduates, but also postgraduates. And it kind of demonstrates just how much UTS graduates get out there. Some of these students have won smallish local awards. For example, the bookshop Better Read Than Dead's short story prize, which was won by one of our students last year. Another student who's not actually listed here recently won a very prestigious international short story prize, which had thousands and thousands of entries. And we find that students are really taken seriously, I guess, when they take their work out there, when they send it off to an agent or to a publisher. The fact that they've come through the writing program does certainly count for something, and it tends to help getting a foot in the door.
Okay, so hopefully in the next few years, your name will be on there when we're doing this again. Okay, so we'll just mention briefly the admission requirements, and we can talk more about this later if you want to ask specific questions. And a lot of this, of course, is on the website anyway. And Deb and I, we both assess all the applications together, and Deb is she will definitely have something to say about those the things there about the creative writing sample, the CV, and the personal statement. But just to give you an idea, you might find that on some of the admissions criteria forms, for example, it talks about whether you've got a degree in, education, management, commerce, society or culture or the arts. And if you haven't, can you give us information about this? And it can get a little bit overwhelming. I guess the bottom line for us is just whatever you've got that you think is relevant, please tell us. If you've done lots of short courses, workshops, mentoring things with writers, whatever, tell us. Just show that you've got a real passion for undertaking writing or editing and publishing, as well as, of course, we do want a writing sample as well. And Deb will just mention a little bit about that shortly. But if you think, oh, I'm not really sure whether it's relevant, have a good think and think, actually, this does show that I'm interested in becoming a writer or working in the literary scene. So tell us as much as you can about why you think, what you think you can bring to the program. Deborah.
Yeah, even though the admission requirements for you is the degree and then the sample of creative writing, can I just encourage everyone who is intending to put in an application to include a statement and a CV anyway. It says here, if you've not met the admission requirements, you must submit a personal statement and a CV. But of course, Craig and I have to field an awful lot of these applications. So it's really, really helpful if you tell us, as he said, as much about yourself as you can. So I strongly encourage everyone who's putting in an application to include this statement. Tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about your passion. mention anything you've done. As Craig mentioned, there might be short courses or weekend workshops or anything at all. It just helps give us an idea, a better idea of who you are, where you're coming from, in order to evaluate that application. With your sample of creative writing, we've said here roughly 2,500 words. Well, it could be a short story, it can be a chapter from a work in progress, it can be a chapter from a novel or from a non-fiction project that you're writing. If you're interested in screenwriting, of course, it can be a scene or a couple of scenes, perhaps 10 to 12 pages from a screenplay. And if you're interested in poetry, we do encourage you still to pursue your interest in poetry, even though I mentioned earlier that we don't currently offer a separate subject. You can still, of course, pursue your interest in poetry. And if that's the case, then your sample of poetry, we call this a suite of poems. So, we'd like to see about 5 or 6 poems. So this is your chance to pull out all the stops and really sell yourself to us. Thanks.
And at the bottom there, you'll see English language requirements for those students, for international students, IELTS, etc., all the details there, and obviously it's on the website as well. And obviously that's really important in terms of the kind of baseline criteria, but also we will absolutely look at the sample of writing as well. So just in terms of application deadlines, just because I know you're all ready to put your applications in, if you're a domestic student, the deadline is the 30th of June, 2020. And if you're an international student, it's the 15th of June, whether you're in Australia currently or whether you're not in Australia, it's the same date. Obviously, we need a bit more time to process things and look at visas, etc. And there's information there about applying through the online application system if you're domestic, and the international office webpage if you're an international student. Spring session commences on the 27th of July, and classes are now open for enrolment. And this may come up as a question, but obviously we need to make you aware that for spring we will be teaching online as we have done this semester. Don't be put off by that. It's actually been quite a rich experience for many, many people. We're absolutely committed to opening the classes as soon as we can, but obviously we have to follow the government advice, the state health department, etc. And so we are going to be teaching subjects online in spring. And that's usually a mixture of recorded lectures, Zoom classes, online workshopping, Q&A sessions, etc., etc. So quite a rich, and I think a lot of the students this semester have been quite what's the word? Not shocked, but quite overwhelmed by how much effort we've put into really trying to replicate as much as we can of the experience online. Dave, do you want to say anything about that, or just?
Well, I think we have put in twice the amount of work this semester, but who hasn't? And it's I think it's been particularly rewarding teaching in the postgraduate program this semester, seeing how we can deliver the content to our students. And I know all the creative writing staff have just bent over backwards to offer as much help and information to students, and it seems to have really paid off so far, which has been very gratifying.
Yeah. And the one scenario with this, if you happen to do the graduate certificate in editing and publishing in spring full-time, I think that's the only scenario where you could actually do the whole certificate online. You could do the 3 subjects and it will be purely online, and you could actually finish it in spring. So if anybody is thinking about that, and whether distance is appealing to you, which we don't normally do, if you're thinking about the graduate certificate, even as just a beginning program, you could actually do that fully online in spring, full-time, and complete it online, if that's what you're interested in. We occasionally do give recognition of prior learning, which means if you've done other degree subjects, you may have, for example, began a postgraduate degree somewhere else, or maybe got a postgraduate degree in a similar area. Sometimes as well, if you've got strong industry or professional experience, we can look at this on a case-by-case basis. Nothing's ever guaranteed, and we don't get many of them, but occasionally we do, and we're very happy for you to ask us about that, and we can certainly help put a case together if you think that maybe 1 or 2 subjects you might be able to get recognition for. And then here is just an idea of the fees for 2020. The first column after the name of the degree program you'll see is it's the cost per subject. So as I said, most of our students are part-time, not all, but most of them. So if you did one subject, for example, you would pay $3,160 per semester because you just do the one subject per semester. Obviously, if you did two, it would be double that, etc., etc. The one on the right there, that's the full-time version. If you did it full-time, it would be etc., etc. And there's the international student fee as well. Just note there that the graduate certificate in editing publishing isn't available to international students. And if you're a UTS alumni, as you can see there, you get a 10% discount. And there's some information there about potential fee help if you are an Australian citizen. And then there's something there about if you're from New Zealand, there's a special category for that, and also for other visa holders. So we're now going to go to questions and answers. We've been talking for about 42 minutes. Hope it's been useful. I can see there's at least 14 questions there. So, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to do something quite good now. We're actually going to, Deb, myself, and Claire are going to put on our videos, so you can actually see what we look like. Now, let's just test this. Let me exit full screen. Can people see us? Have we got the right screen on there, James, or should I be using the... Hi, everybody, if you can see us. Ah, okay, I think it's working great. Deborah and Claire, if you wanted to unmute your mics just in case you have specific questions. So I've got to go in now and field some of these questions. So let me get my emceeing skills and see. Okay, I'm just going to go from the top and then I'll go down, and obviously Deb and I, Claire, if you want to answer this, and if there's anything for James, I'll obviously cue you in, James. So we've got someone called Benjamin Lee asking, do you need to have a project that's been started in order to do the master's program subjects? What if one finds it difficult to work out what project to do? And can a short story collection be a project for the master's program? Deb, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay.
No, you don't need to have a project that's been started. The master's is set up for students who are really starting from scratch. And if you don't have a project, then by the time you get to the project subjects, the idea is that you'll have something. And yes, you can certainly do a short story collection for your major project. The major project is not huge, mind you. It's not possible for you to write a great long novel, for example, but you do get to work on a reasonable sized chunk of a major project. Now that question just disappeared. Did I answer all aspects of it?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good.
And if not, Benjamin can put something else in there. So I was getting happy clicking and doing all my answer done. Thumbs up.
Good.
There's a question about writing for Netflix or other streaming services, and do you have any connections or advice to get into this? Broad question, I guess, in terms of do you have connections? Well, yes, we have connections in the screenwriting area. We have guest lecturers, etc., who work in this area or who worked in, say, script development. I had one last week, for example, in my screenwriting class who's done a lot of TV and film work and was talking about genre in particular. Maybe I'll just, it's not quite the same question, but maybe I'll just throw to Claire here, because you're actually, for your major project, you're actually developing an idea for a long form TV series. So did you want to say anything about that experience and how it's quite different to what maybe you thought when you first came?
Yeah, yeah. I was expecting to get flown to Hollywood after the course is completed. No, I think it's been really interesting learning about all of the various things that you can submit alongside a script. So I'm working on a television series, probably about mini-series, about 5 episodes long. So as part of the major work submission, for instance, you can submit things like script excerpts or something that's called the Screen Bible, or things that help you pitch the document, for instance. So there are all these other ways that you can learn about the industry and develop ways of showcasing your work that isn't specifically necessarily a script.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here about how much of the learning that you would acquire from the degree will be transferred into industries such as journalism and maybe the broader media industries. And are there any crossovers with the UTS's journalism course? We don't have any crossovers at this stage with the journalism course, I'll be honest. Deb, occasionally we do get students who might get special consideration for doing an alternative elective, and how does that work? Have we had many do that with journalism?
Yeah, we do, and we do get a lot of journalists taking the creative writing program. So a lot of people have strong background in professional writing but want to explore their creative side. And we do have subjects, we do have elective subjects that cross over. So we get some journalism students taking creative non-fiction writing, for instance. Now that the postgraduate journalism program has changed, I'm not sure that we have the same kind of reciprocity. Again, that question has just disappeared, so I'm not sure that I got all the details of it.
And how much of it do we think can be transferred across the skills that we learn in creative writing to journalism?
Yeah. Well, particularly when it comes to creative non-fiction, which is really big at the moment. You know, that is the one area in creative writing that's what you might call a growth industry. And, you know, there are lots and lots of opportunities for students who are writing really good quality creative non-fiction. Claire was a bit too modest in mentioning this earlier, but she did mention a piece she had published, and this is what we would call creative non-fiction, and it was published in a very prestigious literary journal, which was Meanjin. Yes, Claire?
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a good example of that kind of subgenre.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Well, Claire, did you have anything you want to say? Did you find that maybe, you know, could you answer that question around anything you think is applicable or might be applicable, or any experiences you've had around seeing your creative writing skills maybe in a kind of journalistic or media area?
Yeah, I think, well, in the creative nonfiction subject, I mean, you do get a lot of opportunity to exercise your research skills and actually develop, you know, a way of interrogating a subject in a more complex and in-depth way, looking at how to set it in history or in terms of cultural critique, in terms of political landscape. You also do a project where you get to interview someone and create a profile. So again, that exercised a whole other range of journalistic skills around, you know, being able to source someone to interview, your interviewing style, and how you can distill someone into a profile.
Thanks, Claire. That's great. There's a question about whether we do anything specific on the self-publishing industry or direct sales, author to reader. Deb, do you know whether Bernadette covers that much in the book publishing and marketing subject?
Look, it's covered very briefly in that subject, but I have to say this is a very specialised area, so it's a bit too specialised for us to include as part of our coursework program. But we do have a lot of former UTS students and contacts who are involved in self-publishing, and we also have as guest lecturers people like Bronwyn Meehan, who comes in and talks to students specifically about small publishing, which is not quite self-publishing, but you know, similar. There are similar challenges, I guess, involved. And we also have a list or several lists of outlets that we direct students to. But as I said, this is very specialised, and it's the sort of thing we would suggest students do a short course in, for example, run by the New South Wales Writing New South Wales, or by the Australian Society of Authors.
Yeah, and we're developing a new subject which would hopefully begin next year, which is looking at kind of the writing industry. And so that, for example, I could imagine at least a week on this as a specialised, you know, bring someone in who does this, but certainly not a whole program. And not a bespoke subject for it. There's a question about the UTS anthology, whether for 2020, if you're finishing your course in the first half of the year, you can submit. It's all based around the timing. Actually, the call goes out a lot earlier than now. So it goes out at Christmas or just no?
It goes out in October, and in fact you can submit to the anthology if you've finished your degree but haven't graduated. If you've graduated, essentially UTS will bump you from the system, so you won't even have your UTS email address. But we do get a lot of students who finish you know, halfway through the year, and they haven't graduated, so they're still qualified to submit their work to the anthology.
Is the course appropriate for those who are wishing to pursue technical writing, copywriting, or is this primarily focused on the creative genres?
Now, this is creative, yeah. Technical writing and copywriting is something that would be offered more in public communications or advertising, which of course we also teach at UTS. So no, we don't teach technical writing as such.
And some of the skills would certainly be applicable, but we don't focus if you're looking for that kind of specific direction. And then a lot of our students actually are already working in this area, funnily enough, and they're looking to be more creative. Not that copywriting can't be creative, of course, but could we help organize an internship or work experience in publishing? Can it be done for course credit? Not sure about the course credit aspect, Deb, you'll know more than me about that, but certainly we do have lots of connections and people often tell us they want people who are willing to come and to help out internship of some sort. Yeah,
the faculty doesn't offer any postgraduate internship subjects, unlike in the undergraduate program. That said, we are often able to help students get internships or some form of work experience in the publishing industry. It's actually very hard. Publishing industries is extremely warm and welcoming, and as Craig mentioned earlier, we all have lots of contacts in that industry, but it is actually really hard to get an internship with a major publisher, for example, which is basically what most students want. But we certainly are able to organise placements, even if they're brief ones. What we can't do, sadly, is organise an internship with another author, which would be ideal, but we just cannot do that. It's not feasible.
I think someone called Alana has just gone, but I might just answer her. She had a question, but in case she's quickly on there, unless I got the name wrong, but whether online study is an option specifically for people who can't come to campus in the week. Oh, you are there. Okay, great. It's working. Sorry, well, we'll still answer. Look, we're going online this spring, obviously, because of COVID-19. We've been online for most of autumn, but at this stage, we're not actually offering online study. We don't do like a parallel. The only subject really you could kind of do like that is the major project, where it's one-on-one with someone like Deb or me or whoever else. So that would be more, you can just kind of manage it. And Claire and I do a lot of us, well, most of us, all of our stuff through Skype or Zoom or whatever, and obviously email feedback and annotations on documents. So that kind of works for that aspect. But in terms of the general classes, at this stage, we don't do that, I'm afraid. Okay, I'll go back to the top. What do we want mentioned in a personal statement? Or what don't we want mentioned in a personal statement? That's probably a good one too.
Well, shall I answer this, Craig?
I think you should. I'm waiting for the answer.
Okay. It just says Craig Batty's going to answer this question live. We just want a little bit of information about why you're interested in doing the creative writing postgraduate program at UTS, what you hope to get out of it, what your writing experience, if any, has been to date, what your passions are, and as we mentioned earlier, if you've done anything at all that's related, that might be relevant, such as a short course or a workshop. Are you a passionate Sydney Writers Festival goer? Have you volunteered at the Sydney Film Festival? Anything at all in your life that you've done that's relevant, just put it in there. Yeah.
Claire, do you remember what you put in yours? Did you do one? Do you remember why you were compelled to work with us?
Yeah, I was upgrading. So my personal statement was more around wanting to do the major project and get one-on-one in-depth feedback. So that was more
Internal.
was a continuation, I think.
But you came to the graduate diploma from a different career track, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. So I was my previous life researcher in psychology. So I had just done a lot of, I think I would have mentioned that I'd done a lot of little creative writing courses just to sort of suss out if it was for me. So I think that's probably what I would put in my statement at the beginning.
Okay. And there's a question here for you directly, Claire, around managing work-life study balance. And one person might be a little bit concerned about the workload. What's your experience of that?
So I think, yeah, I mean, as I was saying before, I think it's about, you know, reflecting on what you've got going on in your life and having a think about what your working style, particularly for creative work, is like. So like I said, I think that's, while I've also been keen to be very gung-ho and do as much as I possibly can, sometimes you don't necessarily figure out what the piece needs, and you need a bit of time to reflect it or think about something else. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend cramming it in. And if anything, what I do is I would actually enroll in, say, 2 subjects, pay attention to census date, and then, you know, 6 weeks in, make a call about whether everything, you know, I'm managing my workload well enough. And if there is something that, if it gets too busy, then I can always drop down one and pick it up at another time. So just to get a sense or really experience it at first, and then you can always reduce your load if you need to.
Yeah. And we have the census date, so you'd have to decide right on the first day. You could, you know, try it out, as you were saying. There's a specific question here, Deb, around poetry. Someone who's not yet published, but they're also interested in playwriting and writing for the screen, and would they be eligible to apply? And would we recommend this degree, or better to find a program that is focused on poetry?
Yeah, if poetry really is your passion, and I know there's also writing plays there, which is another thing we don't offer at UTS, it might be better to try and find a program with a focus on poetry. That said, I don't know that there is one, especially in Sydney. I do know that at the University of Sydney they have a very strong poetry subject taught by a wonderful poet called Judith Beveridge. And some UTS students in the past have taken that one subject as one of their electives, and the university has made it possible. Generally, it's possible for you to take a subject from another university, no matter what you're doing. But I will say that despite that, we do have people pursuing poetry projects, and we are able to supervise them. We actually have a poet who teaches at UTS, part of the program, so she's available for supervision if that's the passion you want to pursue in your project. But unfortunately, we cannot cater for people who are interested in writing plays.
Yeah. There's a question here about the grading system for the writing submissions into the master's degree. Obviously, we have a system, Deb. And is there a specific grade that would get us into the program, or is it more around seeing passion and potential? Well, I think, yeah, absolutely. We don't have a grading system. Well, we have kind of, but it's not like we give you a score out of, 10 or anything. We are looking for potential and passion and voice. Deb, what do you think about this?
There is a grading system in that you have to get over, it's 50%, I think.
Well, that's the overall thing, yeah.
But the most important part of the application, as far as we're concerned, is your writing sample. That's where we really see your potential. So it is possible that your overall application might fall down in some areas, but then your writing sample just blows us away, in which case we'll be very, very flexible. I mean, we do exercise a lot of discretion here and a lot of flexibility. And we need to do that because we do get applications from people who are simply not ready for the program, and we can't let them in because we know they'll struggle. It'd be unfair to them. And also, if we as I said, if we do see an overall application that might be a little bit weak, but the writing sample is fantastic, then we'll try our hardest to get that over the line.
Yeah. So definitely we're looking for passion, potential. It doesn't have to be brilliant. It helps if it is, but you know, it's just looking for potential. Claire, do you remember what you submitted when you came? Did you submit a sample? And do you remember, have you ever looked back at that?
I actually submitted the piece that I ended up getting published, so it was a little bit of a cheat actually, because it was for the upgrading to the masters. But I do actually look back at the things I wrote before I started this course. There's quite a difference there, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Can I just add something here, Craig?
Yeah.
What we suggest you do in your application is to put down both the master's and the graduate diploma. And the reason for this is if we assess it and realise or decide you're not ready for the master's, we can often recommend that you just be offered the graduate diploma. But if you haven't put that down on your application form, then it has to go back to you and you have to reapply, and then we reassess it. So it just makes it easier all round if you put down both, and then if you don't get into the master's, then there's a very, very good chance you'll get into the graduate diploma. And as Craig explained earlier, once you're in the program, you can easily articulate into the master's, and that's a very common thing for students to do.
But not so easily, because Claire had to obviously do an application and prove herself. We don't want to make it sound like it's...
No, when I said easily, I meant in terms of the administration.
Sorry. Pick me up on my, the grammar. There's a question here about the anthology again, just thinking about whether people can just contribute stories or actually work on the editing and publishing side. Well, yes, they can absolutely work on the editing and publishing side. And Deb, you've steered a couple of anthologies over the years, haven't you? So you can talk about that.
Yeah, all the work for the anthology is assessed anonymously. So the committee that's reviewing all the submissions won't know who's submitted what. And every single year, the committee decides on whether they're going to allow editors to also submit work. And every year they decide that they will, because, as I said, it's anonymous. So, and it's, I think, just about every year, the anthology contains at least one piece by someone who's on the editorial committee. So there's no problem with that at all.
There's a question about prior learning required for the master's or graduate diploma or certificate. Just to clarify, when I said recognized prior learning, that means that if you have certain levels of prior learning, you can get recognition, which means you can kind of opt out of a subject, for example. But in terms of more broadly prior learning, as we've just mentioned, obviously the sample is really key, but also anything you've done, tell us anything, you short courses, weekend courses, even if you're entering competitions, obviously if you've had anything published, worked on magazines, even at university or whatever, just anything that relates to the writing, storytelling industry broadly. So you don't, obviously there are requirements in terms of your undergraduate degree, but if you haven't got an undergraduate degree and you've got lots of industry experience, we can certainly assess. So we have quite a range of applicant types, and if you're not really sure, obviously you can get in touch with us at any point, but better to put in and tell us as much as you can to help get over the line, rather than just not bothering, because you might not think you might think you're not going to make it. So get in touch, or just give it your all, and we'll certainly look at the bigger picture. Does that sound right, Deb?
Yeah, yeah, sorry. And sometimes when we assess these applications and we read through the CVs and the academic transcripts in detail, we see that a student may have completed a subject or more that is rather similar to the ones we offer in the program. And so therefore, when we're assessing those applications, we often say the student might be interested in seeking RPL or recognition of prior learning for at least one subject in the program.
And there's just one more question on there, which is probably quite good because we've only got 2 minutes left, I think. There's a question about the creative doctorate, about selection criteria and eligibility and GPAs, etc. That's slightly a tricky one because it's not, there is specific research degree criteria for a doctorate. Usually it's an undergraduate honours degree to, you know, kind of first class or upper second. Or if you have a master's degree with some kind of research component or a major project. If you're doing a creative doctorate, you'll be writing a creative project. So usually we can count the creative project for your master's in this degree as part of that qualification matching. You might get invited in the sense that your lecturers, for example, might say you should think about doing a doctorate, but it's really about obviously when you apply, there's qualifications, there's also the research proposal. That's a really key point. And you'll develop a really strong research proposal across, you know, it can take quite a few months actually to really get the proposal sparkling, because you have to do a lot of research and, you know, to get the proposal done in the first place. And obviously some creative writing samples. So it's kind of slightly, it's a bit of everything. And it also includes some strategic alignment with the work that your supervisors are doing, the kind of subject matter or the methodological approach, and also something that's going to fit into the UTS kind of research focus. But obviously creative doctorates, creative writing is something we really support passionately in our department. So we would be very supportive if you meet the criteria. And for those who don't meet the criteria, in terms of honours, or whether the master's degree, the coursework master's degree has enough research in it or equivalence. Some students just start with a master's by research and then they upgrade into a doctorate within their first year usually. That's a common pathway for people as well. So that's that one. I think we're going to wrap it up. I've just got a little message saying to do that, which I was doing it anyway. We've got no questions unanswered from what I can see. Is it unless anybody has any final questions to pop up into the box, I think we'll finish there. Any final words from you, Claire, or you, Deb?
All done. Thanks again for attending.
Yeah, thanks so much for attending. It's been really nice. Well, we haven't seen you, but it's been really nice to know that you're there somewhere and you've all seen our houses, which is, you know, not what normally happens in open evenings, so that's good.
And email us if you have any specific questions, of course.
Yeah. And we look forward to seeing your applications. You've got obviously international 15th of June, domestic 30th of June. You might apply for next year, which is fine. You can apply early as well and just kind of defer your enrollment, no problem. We look forward to seeing your applications, and like Deb said, any questions, just get in touch and we'll be very happy to respond. Thanks everybody, and thanks again to Deb and Claire, and thanks to the team behind this webinar who brought it all together and made it work. Thanks again for coming, everyone.